can see the capital through for at least 3 years. So that's led to less of these single freewheeling sole trader types. Regional hubs and the IFA industry is beginning to look like the life offices of the 1990s. Next slide, please. And where this is going with data and compliance is it's moving from a defensive action, reviews, past business reviews, looking back, trying to sort it out, and more about positive compliance. And that's what we're going to try and demonstrate here. So less of the avoiding and preparing and reviewing, and more of it's all about quality, outcomes, and efficiency. And that's partly driven by the way that the regulators looking at us. One of the things the FCA are doing, next slide, is voluntary requirements, VREQs, and they do, next slide, they do these informally and they do these formally. And if you look at the formal ones only, can't really see the lines there, but anyway, they're issuing about 100, probably 150 a year, and it's growing. That's the last 4 years of published data so that's on the FCA register. People have had a permission action against them, public action against them. For for every one of those, there's another, probably another 10 who have had individual letters just saying, we think you ought to consider, almost invariably, consider stop growing and get the controls in place before you're allowed to grow further. That's a huge change, and it feeds through to the licenses. People who have had licenses, a year later, they're reviewing what the activities of the firms are doing, and they're pulling them out saying, hang on, you didn't put that on your business plan. Why not? Stop growing, stop recruiting, stop taking on new business. And it's a killer. The bills are still rolling in. We've all, we're not in the public sector. We have to survive. And that is a really stressful event. And it's happening more and more. It's under the radar. It's not reported in Parliament or that. And it's something that all IFAs need to be aware of. And of course, nobody really is until you get that email from the FCA. Next slide. I think this is over to you, Jason.
So thanks, Charlie. I read yesterday or the day before, the FCA have taken away a rather large license as well from a firm. So it ties in with what we're going to go through now, really, around where is your firm currently in terms of its data, its protection, its processes and behaviours of the advisors, and that all feeds into why the FCA will potentially come along and have a look at what you're doing, because there's been some critical changes. Just for reference, I've been involved and gone up to see the FCA because they've launched several one is quite a large incentive actually for global companies to come and use it's data. It's not live data, but they're looking at the use of AI. So it's all entirely fed around AI and how they can utilize it and what tools can be created to give greater oversight, to go more in depth, to make everything transparent so that they can see data streams coming through, so that they won't need to do anywhere near as much investigation as they currently do before they start issuing these letters and looking at VREQs. So the landscape within the next 2 years is going to change radically once these new AI tools are fully utilised by the FCA and others, and that could potentially be a part of that, because if our more and more clients are using the AI file checks, which means they can do far more and be far more detailed and more accurate. And I would say that that's a good thing, and that transparency can be reported directly to the FCA and back to clients even. So this is potentially a behavioural shift for some firms, and certainly for some advisors, in terms of how they advise or what they record when they advise, especially. So a common theme that has been in these conversations with the FCA is that if you can't evidence control through data, you don't have control. As in, we've had some worrying conversations with clients where they've said, well, everything's in my head, and if they want to know something, I'll just tell them, and that's just not going to wash. It doesn't wash now, let alone in the future. So, and another key equation for that is that growth and governance, go hand in hand. So the weaker your governance and the more you grow, the more supervisory containment will probably follow as a requirement should you not be able to evidence the data, especially. So poor MI, it comes back all the time, and with a system like that, where if you have advisors using the CRM part with a new business engine, and you're feeding in things like the turnover commissions and fees, and which advisors sold which products and what the valuations were, you can create an entire suite of MI from the advisor's side. And from the compliance engine, where you're tracking breaches, complaints, CAS, T&C, full pre-sale and post-sale advice checks, the amount of data and governance data you can produce is huge. And again, yes, the FCA will be interested to come and look at that. But again, it's quite nice to be able to print off a one-page risk report, which we have, that lines everything up, that you can keep the FCA at bay, frankly, if it's all in the system and easily reported. It's good for you internally to highlight issues or gaps in knowledge, etc., where you need to go and fix some certain issues potentially. And obviously, there's a huge amount around financial resilience, and also consumer duty is obviously the extremely large topic. So again, it might be a question of adapting and using different technology to get the right results. I nearly said next slide, but I'm the one controlling it. If you don't get it right, what is the impact on firms? And again, you may well know this already, but in terms of the immediate restrictions that might be imposed, you've got the freeze of revenue. So as Charlie's already said, you'll receive a nasty letter saying, you must stop taking on new business or stop selling this product, or you might have skilled person reviews. You'll have, I think because these things are almost always public, you will receive reputational damage, which can take you years to recover from, or not at all in some instances, and obviously ongoing supervisory intensity. So the FCA will not let go until they're happy that these issues are being corrected, and even after that, you'll be heavily supervised, and you'll have a lot of verification work to go forward. We've had several firms come and join us in the last year or so with that in mind. So they've had that visit, and they needed better systems in place, better reporting, and need to work in a more transparent way. And it's gone particularly well for them. So I think they're now just coming out of that tunnel, and they're now proving to the FCA they will be working in a their behaviours have improved certainly across the board, and they can be let off the leash. Again, the FCA doesn't stop your growth because you're too big. They stop it because your systems aren't in line with your risk. So again, we see that a lot with people as maybe selling 100 policies a month, but only checking 1 or 2, which is never going to wash really going forward. So data lakes, this has come up quite a bit as well. So how the FCA are going to use AI to monitor your firm and use their data lakes. Charlie, this is more, I think you've created this one. But,
yes, they've mentioned data lakes. A nice political term, isn't it? And they've mentioned it a few times, and so you have to sort of imagine where they're coming from, and they've invested hugely in their own. I think they have server rooms inside the FCA, and so what we're talking about is like moving away from the old-fashioned compliance site visits, file review, reactive investigation, picking up from the past, and now trying to look forwards and pulling together large-scale data analysis. That's that slide. Over to you, Jason.
Yeah, so a bit more in depth on that. So the FCA will be aggregating the data. So again, wherever they can get it, and if they can't get it easily and quickly, that raises another red flag, because it means you just don't have it. You don't have it at hand yourself. So if you can't monitor your own firm's performance in certain strict criteria, how could you prove to the FCA that you are, or your clients are, protected, etc.? So, some of the critical categories to look at would be the Gabriel and the reg data returns you need to provide, complaint reporting. That keeps coming back. I'm told, I speak to many clients each week, and there's a spectrum of people logging no complaints and thinking that's a great thing, to people logging pretty much everything as a complaint. The reality is, if you log no complaints, it pretty much waves a massive red flag, say you either don't know what a complaint is, or you don't have a system to record it, or you just don't record them when they happen because you think that's the right thing to do. And the reality is, whilst we're not advising you, and that's IFAC's job, a complaint and a breach, you need to have have them identified. You need to know what the advisors need to know when they're happening, and hold your hands up to it, and then record it. And again, that provides a system where you've got a breach log and a complaint register, so that information is just fed in very quickly and easily, and then it's easily reported monthly, quarterly, annually, whatever you need to do. And again, consumer duty metrics, again, depending on the systems you're using, are you able to clarify to the FCA and back to clients directly, actually, that you've got enough information there to confirm you're meeting consumer duty requirements or not? And, are you aware of the market and third-party systems? So I think because of the choice now, especially with AI tools at the front end for advisors, are you aware of, what's happening? Are you making the most of these improvements and these tools that can, benefit you, the client, the company? Forgetting the FCA, really, you wouldn't need to worry about them at all if you had everything lined up nicely and you were humming along beautifully. The FCA audit would not be a stressful event, frankly. So worth bearing in mind.
Just add on product sales data, which is one of the things that they're examining. They're not getting that data from you. They're getting that from the platforms and the fund managers and the providers. So they have multiple ways into your business. Yeah.
And the ways that they will identify, and you can preemptively identify yourselves and self-diagnose almost, is you've got these tools and capabilities now. Whether you shouldn't put client data directly into AI engines like ChatGPT or Copilot or Claude without having a restricted professional license where you have a bubble and it works. That data is then not shared to the wide world and wider AI systems. So we internally work to the highest level of ChatGPT Pro, 5.4 I think we're on now, whereby that's not how the AI engine works for the BAT system. It goes through Amazon, but that information is always classified. It's burnt after reading. It's never processed in terms of feeding AI engines elsewhere or helping other clients. So you do have to be aware of these things and be very careful with how you use a lot of these tools. But again, we had a client the other day who's got an engine now that analyzes the documents and actually identifies if it's worthy of registering a complaint. Or it will analyze the emails and say, well, actually, because of the terminology and the tone, that should probably be registered as a complaint. So again, you have to look internally to go, well, do we look out for these things? Do we have an internal or an FCA recognised definition of what a breach is and what a complaint is, and do we actively log them? And again, you might think not logging them is a good thing, but I would, as a bank manager for 14 years for Lloyds, where if we didn't log at least one complaint and several breaches a month, we were in trouble for therefore not proving that we were keeping on top of those things and identifying them when they happened. So you shouldn't make them up, but you should certainly be aware of them. So what it means to you as a firm, in terms of what the FCA are looking for, you will be benchmarked constantly against firms of a similar size. That's the way they publicly said they will trade this information, is to say, well, if you're a 10 advisor firm, we will measure against as many other 10 advisor firms' data as we can, and that's how they will benchmark how many complaints on average are being raised, and therefore you fall above or below the benchmark in terms of what your peer group is doing, as well as profitability anomalies. If you're wildly profitable suddenly and have massive spikes, they're going to take a real interest in that, as well as growth. If you're growing at, unless you're acquiring other firms and acquiring growth that way, without that, if you're simply growing at 50% annually without acquisition, then they would probably want the data on how is that happening. Is it exceptional selling? Are you overselling to clients, etc.? So again, the more data you have in your CRMs and in your new business books and in your file checks to identify those things, the better off you'll be for keeping them at bay. And data inconsistency, again, that's critical in our system, that we reference the documents that have been fed in and we reference whether the fees and the values and everything matches it across the document set. So have you told the client one thing in the suitability letter, another in the illustration, etc., or the application? So our systems will verify that all matches, and whilst we can't correct it for you, it would give you enough data to go back to the advisor and correct the documents as well. So how you can leverage your data. So again, this is you being proactive, adopting to the right technology, training advisors to use it correctly, whether it's the CRM or the new business books, the AI tools that are out there now for notation, for fulfilling a suitability letter. And again, a lot of it sometimes is knowing what you shouldn't do, how you use AI and when you shouldn't use it, for putting in live client data, etc. is the big no-no. But again, mirroring what the regulator is going to ask. So if you're just aligned and you understand what they will be looking at, and you apply those rules internally, you'll just be ahead of the game. So it shouldn't be a surprise when the FCA put a data request into you and want to see X, Y, Z. If you knew that's what's coming potentially and you work to that preemptively, you'll be in a good spot. Building the MI, again, like any other suite of systems, the more data you put into it and the more transparent it is, the better off you'll be in terms of management information, reporting that comes out of that. And, if there's a spike in growth, profitability, product sales, etc., the more MI you have to show that you're on top of that and you understand where it's come from and why, and it actually came from, a particularly good marketing campaign we run, and we accelerated our growth in certain ways. So is your financial promotions log clean, up to date, audited? That's something that we'll come and look at as well. How you use data to evidence, again, that's pretty much what we're talking about really. But are you evaluating the consumer duty outcomes? Are you looking for fair value assessments? Is the AI oversight and effectiveness in place? Training and competency. So again, T&C, CAS, all these things that prove, and the financial exams and the score results, etc. Are you able to verify, along every line where your advisors are in their journey and their annual assessments, exams and qualifications, etc. And are you using a range of systems to keep up with all of that? And Charlie's already said that the move really will go from reactive to predictive. So and I'm afraid I've put this on because I've heard it too many times, which is we'll fix it if the FCA come and ask the question, instead of we know what the risk profile is before the FCA does. I think is a critical part. If you work preemptively to what the requirements are, you won't have an issue when they come.
Yeah, I think that's partly the move from sole trader to employing people. I think if you're a sole trader, sole practitioner, it's probably fine. The FCA asks you your files, you can probably cobble some together and fill in the blanks and send them off. But about 10 years ago, a chap was fined and banned from the industry because he did just that, but he did it on his advisor files, if you know what I mean. So we better give me the files first, and then amended them, then sent them to the FCA. So dishonesty. We're into the next slide, are we?
I think that's you. Yeah, there we are.
Yeah. So the FCA language is all sort of common stuff, really, but it's nice to sort of see how they talk. Identify risk, assessing risk, preventing harm, detecting fraud, monitoring markets. So it's trying to find a defence against those. And showing how you do that, and not by retrospective checking on what you have been doing, but rather in a proactive way, so you can show exactly where your firm is.
Yeah, and I'd say those are really good. Depending on where you are in your use of general AI, those are really good keywords to and to put into a good summary. If you wanted to put into ChatGPT, for instance, which would probably be the best engine for it, assess my firm based on identifying risk and assessing risk, preventing harm. You can upload. You can redact some data from your live documents, fact finds, and suitability letters, etc. As long as you take out the client's specific data and say, assess me against that, it will give you a shockingly good assessment. And honestly, look, whilst you should be using IFAC for a human intervention to say, actually, that's not up to scratch, and this should be better, and you should do it like this, and here's a template. If you want to do a quick pre-audit, there's nothing wrong, like I say, so long as the client data isn't intact, there's nothing wrong with using critical keywords like this to say, give me a quick risk assessment based on. And again, it might highlight some gaps in knowledge with advisors, or gaps in clarity, or anything like that. That's when you get real value.
presumably the FCA do the same thing. They work out 10 KPIs that they want to follow, and they just say, well, give me that data from all the companies, which is somewhere buried somewhere. Collate all that data, probably shove it into ChatGPT, and says pick out 5 firms to have a go at based on those KPIs. Oh dear,
it is,
it's so horribly obvious. But
that's a critical point, again, from being in the FCA offices last month and being involved in their ongoing AI tech. There's 4 or 5. It's accelerating rapidly. Their adoption of AI, and their, again, enabling of global companies to produce better kit to, frankly, satisfy all of these killer questions. That's what it's being built for. That's why they're encouraging it, so that they can identify risk easier, so that they can assess that risk quickly, and they can assess more risk, across more firms in a single day. And again, if you're not aligned to that, you're behind the curve, and you'll fall foul of it if you're not able to provide them what they want, or provide your own records. If they have the data and you don't, that's a very tricky situation to be in.
Yeah, so positive compliance obviously reduces risk, as seen from outsiders. It's not just the regulator, by the way, it's also firms doing due diligence when they're acquiring other firms. And we have seen several. Well, there's 1 or 2 every couple of years pop up who've consistently over the last 10 to 15 years who have failed the due diligence, but it seems to be more common recently. Left at the altar, if you know what I mean, which is an incredibly painful thing. Everything's signed off, everything's agreed, and at the last minute they go, hang on, we found something you don't like. So how are you going to be more positive without these retrospective reviews and without these looking back all the time at what you have done? So structured workflows. There's a workflow on that called Advisor. You put in the fact find data and you press next, and that is an example of a structured workflow. It works very well for mortgages and for term assurance. It's I found that investment businesses and pensions is probably too complicated for it at this stage, but a lot of people are using it. Automated validation rules. So again, that's set either within the system or within your own systems. And this gives real-time visibility of your advice and activity. So as you're going along, as different advisors are entering, if you've got the same system, you can see in real time and monitor consistently, and get a decent oversight of your business. Some of these systems are like it's sort of moving from spreadsheets to it's like a pyramid system, and you just put in the data at the top, and then along the bottom you can see all the data. You've got the dashboard, and that's really what should be directing your business. And you can show to counterparties what is happening in your business. Next slide.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's I think that following on from that theme, that we know within the industry still at large, it's very much compliance. It is the bugbear at the end of the process that you've got to do some of, and it's a pain, which is why BAT has been adapted and improved certainly over the last year in terms of launching the AI for relieving the time pressure from pre and post sale checks. And the reason we have such a large compliance model is so that, again, you've got lots of positive outcomes, and you can use the compliance checks for a positive. You're going to improve the client outcomes, you're going to improve your sales potentially if you shorten the gaps, if you improve the advisor knowledge, if you make it less risky, etc. So again, you've got everything from automated data capture, which is what we do. If the system is being used well, you've got a one-page report that you can print monthly, quarterly, whatever you like, for board meetings, or or straight to the FCA, that will give you a pre-audit score and show how many files you're checking, what the quality has been like, the passes and failures, etc. So again, the more transparent you are internally to say, well, actually, let's identify those and let's fix the issues. That's what the FCA will want to see. I think that the reality of people saying everything's fine, we're 100%, there's no issues, would make the FCA come and look even harder, because that just simply can't be true. There will be issues. There's always an issue with certain things going on, and it's how good you are identifying those problems and dealing with them. Are you putting learning plans in place? Are you making corrective actions? And that's what you can put through the BAT system and prove that you are, and have that reporting. So it does lead to some real positives. There's less remediation, there's less rework, there's less compensation should it go really wrong, if you're being proactive. The real-time dashboards that we present, again, if the systems are being used by advisors and the back office teams, especially paraplanners and admin, you get a lot of immediate information, which is really handy. And again, the consumer duty evidence packs, which is what the FCA are going to come looking for, almost imminently. So if it's in that place, you can reduce the work time to produce that. It won't derail the company to go off and create that data pack. So you will probably stop your advisors currently seeing clients for a few days in order to prep and get the data and the details of the reports right, because they're not currently in the system, they're not currently being generated automatically. So that is again a future benefit, is to have it all in one place, and you alleviate that pain when it comes. So yeah, being smart with your compliance really does, it reduces the capital strain. It can reduce your PI insurance premiums actually. It will reduce the regulatory interventions. You can keep the auditor happy if you can, if you wanted to be a pain with them and send them a monthly audit report saying this is where we are, this is what we've checked, this is how we've checked it. They're probably far less likely to come along and have a look. And operational waste, and that could be time, time spent from the advisors, the back office. You can save an awful lot. You can save hundreds of hours over the year by implementing some of theirs. So unspoken and intangible rules. So beyond, and I think we all struggle with the fact that the FCA rulebook is relatively vague. There's guidance, but there's no sheet of 100 rules that you must follow to produce this. That even you can't even get a straight answer on whether you have to do a fact find or not, frankly. So it's I think the top-down approach is always the best. So do the leaders in the company truly understand the data and the need for the data? If it's superficial and I've just got how many sales we've made and how much money we've made, that's not going to satisfy anybody. It might satisfy the finance manager, but it won't satisfy the FCA. In fact, it might red flag to them. So again, if you can't produce that data quickly, that's an issue in itself. It might derail the team. It might, just take too long to produce a report back to the FCA, which, creates suspicion. And again, is the growth controlled? Are you aggressively expanding without the, and frankly, we see an awful lot of that where companies have acquired other firms, other advisors, acquired a business, but their compliance checks have been now are woefully out of touch. So we've spoken to people very recently where there's 100+ sales going on a month, and because they haven't scaled up their compliance team or using the BAT AI properly, they're probably checking 3 or 4 a month total. So they are well out of control in terms of proving to anybody internally and externally if you're on top of managing the compliance engine or not. So yeah, we won't go through all of these, but again, it stands to reason that if you're not controlling your ARs and you can't say I don't know, or they didn't know, or you're unaware of what their process is, because you should know. And again, all of these things really line up to show you that consumer duty is embedded, and it's not just a cosmetic. We're ticking the box and saying we're doing a good job, because again, that won't stand up. So again, it's a proactive, preemptive approach to running your compliance model, rather than we'll deal with it on the day, which will result in fairly catastrophic issues. Charlie, this is yours, I think.
Yeah, so the questions the regulator are going to ask you are fairly obvious. They're all open questions, and so you need to be able to measure them, measure the answers, and show how you're measuring the answers. So as ever with compliance, it's not about what you do, it's about how you show what you do. And the days of relying on reviews and periodic audits and visits, I think are rapidly disappearing, and it's right up front. It's using the regulators using the AI, and they're expecting to monitor you, and they're expecting you to, in return, they're asking more of firms because it's easier to provide it. Sad to say. So the regulatory burden, I think, is consistent. You just have to keep with it, so to speak. All good for business, of course, because ups the barriers to entry. Nobody can get approved anymore. Ups the barriers to entry, and ultimately the customer pays for it. So,
yeah.
And taking it's what's not to like.
But again, the good news is, I think technologically, and depending where the firm is with digital transformation or embracing change, all of those things combined. So, there are things you can do from today. There's plenty of good technology out there to help advisors streamline their workflow, from AI notation tools through to suitability letter writers. The issue you might have that some clients are facing is that they've probably adapted to 10, 15 new apps or technologies, and not all of them speak to each other. In fact, relatively few do. So we have links into IntelliFlow, for instance, to just transfer the data out of IntelliFlow so it can be used internally with back for the compliance, but it doesn't automatically pass it back in, and that's down to IntelliFlow, not us. But you will see that across various technologies where I can use this app and this AI to get this great result, but it then sits in my CRM and it doesn't really help the next stage. So you do have to review your needs and where your gaps are, and then assess the market. There's some really good content on LinkedIn, especially where there's an advisor AI map, and it's fantastic at breaking down the sections of an advisor journey and really promoting the better channels. And happy to say we're on that, and we're number one on the compliance engine for that. So it's worth finding that. So some of the things you can do straight away are conduct a regulatory health check. So if you look at your data, if it's all either in people's heads or it's on a piece of paper in a filing cabinet, yeah, you've probably got some issues, and you should look at adapting to new technology. You can look at your complaints and your breaches, and whilst you can use AI to look at what would the average rates be, and you can compare yourself to that. It's not true data, but you can get a feel for it. And then moving forward from that, you can implement compliance data architecture. That is to say, you could use BAT. If you use BAT for its full value in terms of its file checking and its data housing, you can then start to really get a detailed picture of the firm and where some issues lie. And again, we even have, in terms of predictive risk indicators, we've got trigger systems. So once the advisor docs are in the system, which is very simple, we've got automated triggers. So you can actually say, well, actually, because they're a new advisor or for whatever reason, this advisor has 100% pre-sale checking, or this product, when we sell it, has 100% sale checking, or a certain fee over a certain value, or an investment over £1 million, whatever you want. We have those as preset triggers to say anything coming in that satisfies that trigger means it has to go immediately to a pre and or post sale check. So that's how you can be very proactive and predictive as well. Cultural actions, these are the critical ones. This is, one of the hardest things is behavior. That there's lots of process training you can do. There's lots of knowledge. There's lots of these things you can identify that we've got a problem and fix it fairly easily. But in terms of cultural actions and behavior change, that's where it really, really can take time, and or you get the most resistance from anybody, frankly, in the firm. And again, that's where, training of the advisors, again, we've got things like the CPD suite of learning, and the financial exams are in BAT, so you can monitor that as you go. Have you aligned the remuneration to the quality metrics? So are you as pretty much everybody is, are you paying commission based on that product being sold? Yes. Are you putting forward any kind of remuneration, any kind of benefit package for somebody who goes a year without having an NTU or a cancellation? Are you incentivizing low risk practices as well? And yeah, are you, as Charlie said a few times, and this is the FCA's approach, are you going to be able to prove it with data? Saying you're doing it is irrelevant. meaning to do it is irrelevant unless you have meaningful data that is auditable. It isn't just, I've written out, a Word document that says we're great and we've hit 100% of our compliance checks. Unless you have a complete data mine there to prove it, again, that's not going to end well, really.
Good. Yeah. Well, I see in Genius, we haven't got the AI onto the new business books. We may enable that. Send you an email afterwards so you can get the new business book examined, at least by the AI, or stripped out to tell you a predictive guide as to where it's going. Yeah. Rather than submitting full file checks, or as well as.
Yeah, we've just launched that new business document review only a week or two ago. So we are, as Charlie says, we're able to enable that for you to get that immediate response from the documentation to highlight any errors, omissions, inconsistencies across the documents, where before it goes any further, before it goes out to the client or through the whole process, you could identify issues immediately and correct them, re-upload the documents and verify that it's now better, and you can go through to sale, post-sale, etc. And for these reasons, really, that the FCA is as we've said, the FCA has moved away from manual checking, and frankly, so should you. So they're looking at algorithms and predictive scoring, and again, their ferocious drive to use AI tools to identify all of these issues quicker and in massive quantity. Again, you must be aware of that and prepare for that, because that's how they will approach you. And I know they're interested in systems like BAT as well, because if they were enabled to see firms who are using it and see the outcomes, which is not the case, by the way, but they may want to, then they could have a hardwired channel of data to come into them to say, across the board, these firms are doing this many checks and these are the results, and they sell lots of this product and none of that product. So it's something, again, and I'd say you're 18 months, 2 years away from the reality of AI, fully embracing AI and having the technology to really see what's going on inside of firms.
Interesting analogy to the HMRC digital tax returns is rapidly becoming mandatory.
This year it's gone to landlords, hasn't it, and certain income. So again, it's in line with that. These things aren't optional anymore. This is mandated.
So you have to use the software to submit your return.
Yeah. Exactly.
Anyway, we're a year or 2 years away from that, I think.
Yeah, I think.
Good. Excellent. Super. I think that's everything, isn't it? Jason, roughly speaking, we'll rattle through it.
Other than look at the back, yeah.
Other than questions from the audience, from the floor.
That was perfect, guys. Thank you very much.
That's good.
Thank you, Rizwan. Okay. If you wanted to go onto the trial and look at the AI running, just let us know after this, and we can sort that out for you.